Officer Ethan Brooks snapped one cuff around my wrist before the Scone bag touched the counter. "You are being detained for theft," he said, loud enough for every table in the bakery to hear. The HOA security liaison beside the pastry case grabbed my receipt from my tray and waved it like evidence. My coffee, my phone, and my paid scone sat inches from his hand. On my screen, a secure evidence transfer hold timer kept counting down for a federal courier waiting 3 blocks away. That was the part none of them understood. The espresso machine hissed behind me. Warm butter and cinnamon hung in the air. A chair scraped across the tile. Someone whispered, "Is this really happening?" Ethan tightened his grip. "Do not make this harder." The cashier's face had gone pale. She stared at the register as if the screen had betrayed her. A red error box blinked near the order history. The HOA liaison leaned closer to Ethan. "I told you she walked off with it." He sounded proud. Too proud. I looked at the receipt in his hand. "That is mine." He folded it once and held it away from me. "Then you should not mind explaining it downtown." A teenager by the window lifted his phone. The camera light reflected in the glass. More phones followed. Quietly. Carefully. Like people were afraid to breathe too loud. My name was Maya Carter. I was 39 years old, wearing a gray wool coat, black slacks, and low heels that still carried rainwater from the sidewalk outside. I had come in for coffee, a blueberry scone, and 10 quiet minutes before a scheduled handoff. Nothing more. The receipt had printed late because the register froze. The cashier had apologized. I had waited. Then the HOA liaison stepped in like the bakery belonged to him. "People have been stealing from small businesses all week," he had said. He never said people like me. He did not need to. Ethan turned me slightly toward the door. "Hands where I can see them." "One hand is already cuffed," I said. My voice stayed flat. A small silence followed. Not long. Just enough for a woman near the pickup shelf to lower her cup. The cashier finally spoke. "Officer, I think the payment went through." Ethan did not look at her. "You think?" "The system glitched." "Then print another receipt." She tapped the screen. Nothing happened. The red box flashed again. The timer on my phone dropped below 4 minutes. The courier would not move without my confirmation. Evidence would not transfer. A sealed file would sit in limbo. And a morning mistake inside a bakery would become something larger than a pastry. I looked at Ethan. "Check the receipt before you continue." His jaw tightened. "I am not taking instructions from you." The cuff clicked against the metal edge of the counter. The sound was small. The room heard it anyway. Outside, a black sedan slowed near the curb. My phone buzzed once. Then twice. The secure timer turned yellow. The cashier looked from the register to my screen. This time, she understood something was wrong. Then the bakery phone started ringing. The bakery phone rang again. Sharp. Insistent. Nobody moved to answer it at first. The cashier stared at the flashing register screen. The red error box still blinked beside the order log. Ethan kept hold of my wrist. His attention stayed on me, not on the growing list of things around him that demanded attention. The smell of warm sugar and fresh bread drifted from the kitchen. A tray of pastries rattled somewhere behind the counter. The phone rang a third time. Finally, the cashier grabbed the receiver. "Thank you for calling Maple Street Bakery." Her voice sounded strained. She listened for 2 seconds. Then her eyes widened. One moment. She looked toward me. Then toward my phone. Then toward Ethan. "It is about her." The room grew quieter. A man near the window lowered his newspaper. A teenager stopped recording long enough to glance at his friend. Even the HOA liaison seemed uncertain for the first time. "Who is it?" Ethan asked. They did not say. The cashier covered the receiver. They only asked if Maya Carter was there. My phone buzzed again. The timer had dropped below 3 minutes. The yellow warning bar stretched across the screen. The black sedan outside remained parked at the curb. Its engine idled softly. Rainwater reflected its headlights across the sidewalk. I shifted slightly. The cuff brushed against the edge of the counter. "Answer them," I said. Ethan ignored me. "Nobody talks to her right now." The cashier hesitated. Then she returned to the call. "Yes, she is here." Her expression changed immediately. "Wait." "What?" She listened. Her eyes flicked toward me again. Then she slowly handed the phone toward Ethan. "They want to speak with you." Ethan did not take it. "About what?" "They would not tell me." The silence stretched. A customer near the pastry case folded his arms. Another lifted a phone higher. More people were recording now. Nobody wanted to miss whatever came next. The espresso machine released a burst of steam. The sound cut through the tension like a warning. Ethan finally grabbed the receiver. "Officer Brooks." His voice carried confidence again. For a few seconds he listened. Then his expression hardened. "I am handling the situation." Another pause. "No, sir." His jaw tightened. "With respect, I do not take orders through a bakery phone." Several people exchanged looks. The call ended. Ethan handed the receiver back without explanation. The cashier looked unsettled. "Who was it?" asked the HOA liaison. "None of your business." That answer did not help him. Outside, the black sedan door opened. A man stepped onto the sidewalk carrying a slim leather portfolio. He did not rush. He simply looked toward the bakery entrance and started walking. The teenager near the window noticed first. "Someone is coming in." Heads turned. Ethan did not. He was too focused on proving a point. The register suddenly chimed. Once. Then again. The red error box disappeared. The cashier froze. Her fingers hovered over the screen. "Officer," she said carefully. "The payment just posted." Ethan looked over. "What?" She turned the monitor toward him. "The transaction completed." The receipt number appeared in bright green. Time stamp. Order number. Full payment. The blueberry scone. The coffee. Everything. Nobody spoke. The teenager started recording again. The HOA liaison took a small step backward. Ethan stared at the screen. Then at me. Then at the receipt history. The bakery door opened before he could say anything. The bakery door swung inward. Cool air drifted across the room. Every head turned toward the entrance. The man from the black sedan stepped inside carrying a slim leather portfolio under one arm. He wore a dark suit. No badge showed. No title. Nothing flashy. Yet he walked with the confidence of someone who expected people to listen. The bell above the door gave a soft chime. Then silence returned. Ethan looked toward him. "We are in the middle of police business." The man stopped a few feet inside the doorway. His eyes moved across the room. The cashier. The customers. The phones recording. The half-finished coffee cups. Then the handcuff around my wrist. His expression tightened slightly. "I can see that." The smell of fresh blueberry pastries drifted from the kitchen. A baker paused behind the glass display and watched. Nobody seemed interested in pastries anymore. The man stepped closer. "Maya Carter?" he asked. Yes. He nodded once. The movement was small. Deliberate. Ethan immediately stepped between us. You know her? I do. Then you can wait. The man looked at Ethan for a second. Not angry. Not intimidated. Just measuring him. The transaction cleared. The cashier spoke before anyone else could. Her voice shook. The receipt is valid. She turned the monitor again. Bright green confirmation still glowed on the screen. The order history matched. The payment timestamp matched. Everything matched. Ethan glanced at it and looked away. That does not change the situation. A customer near the window frowned. How does it not? Nobody answered him. The teenager recording zoomed in. His phone remained perfectly steady. The HOA liaison folded his arms tighter across his chest. Earlier he looked confident. Now he looked trapped inside his own mistake. The man with the portfolio took another step forward. Officer, I would strongly recommend removing the restraint. Ethan's jaw tightened. And I would strongly recommend staying out of this. Several people exchanged looks. The bakery had become too quiet. Even the refrigerator hum seemed louder than normal. My phone buzzed again on the counter. The yellow warning bar turned orange. 2 minutes remaining. The man noticed immediately. So did the cashier. That timer has been counting down this whole time, she said. Ethan ignored her. The man did not. What happens when it reaches 0, he asked. I looked at the screen. A transfer window closes. Can it be reopened? Not quickly. The answer settled over the room. The teenager lowered his phone for the first time. This is over a scone, he asked quietly. Nobody laughed. Because it had stopped being about a scone a long time ago. Outside, another vehicle pulled to the curb behind the black sedan. Then another. Through the front window I saw 2 people step out carrying tablets. The man with the portfolio noticed them too. His eyes narrowed slightly. They got here faster than expected. Ethan followed his gaze toward the sidewalk. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. The cashier looked from the window to the receipt screen. Then back to Ethan. Officer, she paid. The words sounded stronger now. Strong enough for everyone to hear. Ethan opened his mouth to respond. Before he could, a customer near the pickup counter raised a hand. I think my phone recorded the whole thing. The customer held his phone higher. I think my phone recorded the whole thing. Every eye in the bakery shifted toward him. Even the people who had been trying to stay out of it leaned forward slightly. The smell of coffee and warm pastry still filled the room, but nobody seemed interested in food anymore. The young man looked down at his screen. I started recording when the officer grabbed her wrist. Ethan turned toward him immediately. That is not relevant. The customer blinked. It seems pretty relevant. A few people nodded. The HOA liaison looked away. The confidence that had carried him earlier was fading fast. The man with the leather portfolio remained calm. He had not introduced himself. He had not shown credentials. Yet he seemed completely unbothered by the growing tension. Outside, the 2 people carrying tablets stepped onto the sidewalk and stopped near the black sedan. They did not enter. They simply waited. That somehow felt more serious. My phone buzzed again. The orange warning bar flashed. 90 seconds remained. The secure transfer window was closing. The cashier noticed. That timer keeps getting shorter. Yes, I said. What happens when it expires? Before I could answer, Ethan cut in. Nobody is discussing anything until this investigation is complete. The teenager holding the phone looked confused. Investigation of what? Nobody answered him. Because nobody had a good answer anymore. The register screen still displayed the completed transaction. Bright green. Impossible to ignore. The cashier printed a fresh receipt. The printer whirred softly. The paper slid out. She stared at it for a second before handing it toward Ethan. "It is right here." Ethan did not take it. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. A woman near the window folded her arms. "So she paid." Another customer nodded. "Looks like it." The bakery bell chimed again as a new customer walked inside. He took one look at the scene and stopped moving. One handcuff. Several phones recording. A police officer. A nervous cashier. Nobody needed an explanation to know something had gone wrong. The man with the portfolio finally spoke again. "Officer, you have proof of payment." Ethan crossed his arms. "I also have a witness statement." The HOA liaison immediately straightened. "Exactly." The words came out too quickly. Too eagerly. The customer with the recording lowered his phone for a moment. "The witness statement is on my video too." The room went quiet. Ethan looked at him. "What?" "The whole conversation." The teenager swallowed. "Everything he said." He pointed toward the HOA liaison. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Outside, a cloud drifted across the sun. The bakery suddenly felt dimmer. The espresso machine hissed again. Steam rose into the air. The man with the portfolio glanced toward the young customer. "Do not delete that recording." "I was not planning to." Another buzz came from my phone. 1 minute remaining. The orange bar turned red. The cashier saw it happen. So did the woman standing beside the pastry display. The red color seemed to affect everyone. It made the countdown real. It made the consequences visible. The two people outside checked their tablets simultaneously. Then one of them looked through the front window directly at me. The man with the portfolio followed their gaze. His expression changed for the first time all morning. Not fear. Recognition. Then he quietly said something that made the room even stiller. "They are tracking the delay now. They are tracking the delay now." The word settled over the bakery like a sudden drop in temperature. Nobody asked who they were. The man with the portfolio had said it with too much certainty. The two people outside remained near the black sedan, tablets in hand, watching their screens. One of them tapped something and immediately looked back toward the bakery window. My phone vibrated again. The red bar flashed across the screen. 45 seconds. The secure transfer window was nearly gone. The smell of roasted coffee beans drifted through the room. A tray of fresh scones emerged from the kitchen. Nobody looked at it. The customer holding the recording lowered his phone slightly. "Tracking what delay?" he asked. The man with the portfolio glanced at him. "A scheduled confirmation that has not happened yet." The answer only created more questions. Ethan folded his arms tighter. "Nobody is leaving until I finish this." The cashier stared at him. Then at the receipt. Then at me. "Finish what?" she asked quietly. Ethan did not answer. Because the original reason was collapsing in front of everyone. The receipt existed. The payment existed. The transaction history existed. Every piece of evidence pointed in the same direction. The HOA liaison shifted his weight again. His confidence looked thinner by the minute. "There was still suspicious behavior," he said. Nobody responded immediately. The teenager recording finally spoke. "Buying a pastry?" A few customers smiled despite the tension. The HOA liaison did not. Outside, another vehicle slowed near the curb. Not a police car. Not a delivery truck. A dark SUV. It parked behind the others and remained there. Nobody got out. The man with the portfolio noticed. So did I. My phone vibrated again. 30 seconds. The red warning bar expanded across nearly the entire screen. The cashier looked at it as if it were a countdown in a movie. Can somebody explain what happens when that reaches 0? She asked. The room seemed to lean toward the answer. The transfer closes, I said. And I looked at the screen. And several people start asking why. The silence afterward felt heavier than anything said before. Ethan stared at me. For the first time, uncertainty appeared in his eyes. Small. Brief. But visible. The customer with the recording cleared his throat. Officer, you should probably take the cuff off. Ethan ignored him. The man with the portfolio did not. That would be wise. Ethan looked at him. Who exactly are you? The question had been hanging in the room for several minutes. The man almost smiled. Almost. Someone trying to prevent a bad situation from becoming worse. The bakery bell chimed again. Nobody entered. One of the people outside had opened the door and was holding it. Waiting. The person remained on the threshold, tablet in hand. Not rushing. Not speaking. Just waiting. The cashier noticed first. They are looking at us. The teenager turned his camera toward the entrance. The woman near the pastry display stepped aside. Even the HOA liaison looked uncomfortable now. My phone vibrated one final time. The red bar reached the end. The countdown hit 0. A soft tone sounded from the device. Not loud. Not dramatic. Yet everyone heard it. The man with the portfolio closed his eyes briefly. Outside, all three people with tablets looked down at their screens at the exact same moment. Then one of them started walking toward the door. One of the people with the tablet stepped through the doorway. The bakery bell chimed softly above him. Nobody spoke. The room had become too quiet for casual conversation. The man wore a dark jacket and carried a tablet tucked against his side. He looked around once. His eyes moved from the customers to the cashier. Then they settled on the handcuff around my wrist. His expression did not change. Somehow that made it worse. The smell of coffee still lingered in the air. A fresh batch of pastries cooled behind the display case. The normal sounds of a bakery felt out of place now. The man approached the counter. Maya Carter, he asked. Yes. He nodded. The confirmation window closed 37 seconds ago. Several customers exchanged confused looks. Ethan stepped forward. Who are you? The man turned toward him. I am here regarding the missed transfer confirmation. Ethan folded his arms. This is an active investigation. The man glanced at the receipt lying on the counter. Then at the register screen showing the completed payment. Then at the customer still holding a phone pointed in our direction. I can see that. The answer was calm. Too calm. The teenager recording shifted his weight. Everybody can see it. A few people looked away. Nobody disagreed. Outside, the other two tablet carriers remained near the black sedan. One of them was speaking into an earpiece. The other continued looking at a screen. The man beside me placed his tablet on the counter. A series of notifications filled the display. Yellow. Then orange. Then red. The cashier stared at them. What are those? Escalation notices. Her face tightened. Because of the delay. Because the delay triggered automated reviews. The words hung in the air. Ethan looked toward the tablet. Reviews of what? That depends on how long the interruption continues. The teenager lowered his phone slightly. All of this over a bakery purchase. No, the man replied. The bakery purchase simply happened first. The answer silenced the room again. My phone remained on the counter. The completed countdown screen had changed. A message now displayed a single line requesting supervisory acknowledgement. The man noticed it immediately. So did I. He exhaled slowly. That happened faster than expected. The cashier looked from the tablet to my phone. Can someone explain what is going on? Before anyone else could answer, the customer with the recording raised his hand. Maybe we should start with why she is still cuffed. Several heads nodded. Ethan's jaw tightened. The HOA liaison took another small step backward. Nobody seemed interested in supporting him anymore. The receipt had destroyed his original claim. The recording threatened to do even more. The man with the leather portfolio finally spoke again. That would be a reasonable question. Ethan looked at him. You still have not identified yourself. Neither have you explained the restraint after proof of payment. The bakery became silent once more. Even the refrigerator compressor seemed loud. The customer recording the video checked his screen. I have everything from the moment he took the receipt. The HOA liaison immediately looked toward him. You should not be filming people. Too late, said the teenager. Outside, another dark vehicle turned onto the street and slowed near the curb. It did not park immediately. It circled once. The tablet on the counter chimed. Everyone looked down. A new notification had appeared. The man reading it froze for the first time since entering the bakery. Then he looked directly at me. They know exactly where the delay started. They know exactly where the delay started. Nobody spoke after that. The words seemed to absorb every other sound in the bakery. The refrigerator hummed. Coffee dripped into a glass pot. Outside, tires rolled slowly across wet pavement. Yet all attention remained on the tablet resting on the counter. The man who had entered from the sedan stared at the notification for another second. Then he locked the screen. Ethan noticed immediately. Who knows? He asked. The man looked at him. People who monitor interruptions. Interruptions to what? Ethan pressed. To processes that are expected to happen on time. The answer was careful. Deliberately incomplete. The customer holding the recording phone frowned. That sounds important. It is, said the man with the portfolio. My phone remained on the counter beside the cooling coffee cup. The completed countdown screen had been replaced by another message. A request. Acknowledgement pending. Escalation active. The cashier read the words upside down and slowly stepped back. This is getting bigger, isn't it? Nobody answered her directly. Nobody needed to. The answer was sitting in plain view. The HOA liaison cleared his throat. It was the first sound he had made in nearly a minute. I think people are overreacting. Several customers turned toward him. The teenager with the phone almost laughed. She paid for the food. The liaison folded his arms. That is not the point. Then what is the point? Asked a woman near the window. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. The silence hurt him more than any argument could have. Outside, the dark vehicle that had circled earlier finally parked. Two more people stepped onto the sidewalk. Neither rushed. Neither appeared surprised. One checked a phone. The other looked toward the bakery entrance. The man beside me noticed them immediately. His shoulders tightened. That tiny movement did not escape my attention. You know them, I said. He looked at me. Then toward the window. I know why they are here. Ethan followed the exchange. Then explain it. Not here. Ethan took a step closer. You do not get to walk in and start making vague statements. The customer recording lifted his phone higher. The camera remained pointed directly at Ethan. Actually, the teenager said quietly, he kind of already did. A few customers smiled. Ethan did not. The cashier suddenly touched the register screen again. Her eyes widened. There is more. Everyone looked over. The completed payment record remained visible. Beneath it sat another entry. Then another. Time stamps. Notes. System messages. She scrolled carefully. The register flagged the transaction as approved almost immediately. The HOA liaison shifted uncomfortably. What does that mean? The cashier swallowed. It means the payment was accepted before the accusation happened. Nobody moved. Even Ethan stared at the screen now. The statement lingered in the air. Accepted before the accusation. The customer near the window slowly lowered his coffee cup. So the system already knew she paid. Yes, said the cashier. It did. My phone vibrated again. Not a warning this time. A new message appeared. The man with the tablet saw it first. His eyes narrowed. Then he looked directly at me. They have started reviewing external footage. The teenager holding the recording blinked. External footage. Anything available. The bakery suddenly felt smaller. Every phone. Every camera. Every angle. Every second. Ethan looked around the room for the first time as if realizing how many lenses had been pointed at him. The woman near the window glanced toward the entrance. One of the newcomers outside was already raising a device toward the front door. Then the bakery security monitor above the counter flickered to life. The bakery security monitor flickered once. Then the screen stabilized. A grainy black and white camera feed appeared above the counter. Every face in the room turned toward it. Even the customers who had been pretending not to watch gave up. The cashier stepped closer. Her hands trembled slightly. The smell of coffee seemed weaker now. The tension had replaced it. The monitor displayed the front register from 20 minutes earlier. There I was. Standing in line. Waiting. Holding my wallet. Holding my phone. Nothing dramatic. Nothing suspicious. The footage continued. The cashier watched herself on screen. That is when the register froze, she whispered. Nobody interrupted. The image showed her apologizing. Then trying the payment again. The customer with the recording phone lowered his device just enough to watch the monitor. Keep going, he said softly. The footage rolled forward. The payment terminal flashed. The cashier looked down. Then nodded. There. She pointed at the screen. That is the approval. Ethan stared upward. The HOA liaison stared too. The room had become completely silent. On the monitor, the transaction completed. The time stamp appeared clearly in the corner. The approval happened before anyone approached me. Before any accusation. Before any confrontation. Before any handcuff. The woman near the window slowly shook her head. Wow. Nobody disagreed. The cashier covered her mouth. It was approved the whole time. The HOA liaison shifted backward another step. That camera does not show everything. His voice sounded weaker now. The teenager recording immediately replied. Neither did your story. Several customers nodded. The man with the portfolio remained still. Watching. Measuring. Waiting. Outside, the people with tablets had moved closer to the entrance. They were no longer pretending to be casual observers. They were paying attention to every second. The monitor continued playing. The next part drew even more attention. The footage showed the HOA liaison approaching the counter. Pointing in my direction. Talking rapidly. Gesturing toward the pastry bag. The camera had no audio. It did not need any. Everyone could see who started the chain of events. The cashier stared at the screen. That was before the officer arrived. "Yes," said the customer near the window. "It was." Ethan looked at the footage. Then at the receipt. Then at me. His confidence continued shrinking one piece at a time. My phone remained on the counter. Another notification appeared. This one was different. The man beside me noticed immediately. So did the tablet carrier nearest the door. Their expressions changed at exactly the same moment. The customer holding the recording phone saw it. "What now?" he asked. Nobody answered right away. The man with the portfolio finally spoke. "The review team has accessed the footage." Several customers exchanged confused looks. "What review team?" asked the cashier. Before he could answer, one of the people outside opened the bakery door and stepped inside. The bell chimed softly overhead. The newcomer carried no coffee. No pastry. Only a tablet and a serious expression. He walked directly toward the counter. Directly toward the monitor. Directly toward Ethan. Then he looked at the screen and said 4 words that changed the room again. "We need that recording. We need that recording." The newcomer did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The bakery had become quiet enough for everyone to hear him clearly. The customer holding the phone looked down at his screen. Then back at the man with the tablet. "My recording?" "Yes." The newcomer stopped beside the counter. His eyes moved briefly toward the security monitor still playing above us. Then toward the completed receipt on the register screen. Then toward the cuff around my wrist. His expression remained unreadable. "Please preserve it exactly as it exists." The teenager nodded slowly. I was not planning to delete it. The smell of fresh bread drifted from the kitchen again. A baker stood frozen behind the display case. Even employees who had been working in the back were now peeking through the service window. Nobody wanted to miss what happened next. The newcomer placed his tablet beside the other one on the counter. Several notifications filled the screen immediately. Time stamps. References. Status updates. The cashier stared at them. "There are so many." "There are," he replied. Ethan looked at the tablets. "Who are you people?" The question finally hung in the open. The man with the portfolio answered first. "People trying to understand why a verified process stopped." Ethan shook his head. "You keep saying that. Because it keeps being true." A woman near the window quietly muttered, "That was a good answer." A few customers nodded. The HOA liaison looked increasingly uncomfortable. Sweat had begun forming near his collar. He glanced toward the door as if considering whether he should leave. Nobody seemed interested in stopping him. Nobody seemed interested in listening to him either. The security footage continued playing overhead. Frame by frame. Minute by minute. The cashier pointed at the screen. "There." Everyone looked up again. The footage showed the moment she handed me the pastry bag. Then the approved transaction. Then the HOA liaison approaching the counter. The sequence was clear. Uninterrupted. The customer with the recording phone exhaled slowly. "That is not how I thought this would end." "It has not ended," said the newcomer. The statement landed heavily. Outside, more people had gathered near the vehicles. Not a crowd. Just enough to notice. Several checked phones. One spoke into an earpiece. Another stood with folded arms watching the bakery entrance. The situation had grown beyond the walls of the shop. My phone vibrated again. This time the screen displayed a new notification. The man with the portfolio saw it immediately. His eyes narrowed. They escalated it. The cashier looked worried. Is that bad? It means more people are paying attention. Nobody seemed reassured by that answer. Ethan finally looked toward me. For the first time all morning, he appeared less certain than before. The customer recording noticed it too. "Officer," he said carefully, "the payment happened before everything else." Ethan did not answer. The security monitor continued rolling. Then another detail appeared. The cashier leaned closer. "Wait." Everyone followed her gaze. On the footage, the time stamp showed exactly when the register approved the purchase. Several seconds before the complaint was made. Several seconds before anyone questioned me. Several seconds before Ethan arrived. The bakery became silent again. The newcomer stared at the screen. Then at his tablet. Then at Ethan. The timeline is now complete. The timeline is now complete. The newcomer did not sound triumphant. He sounded concerned. That difference mattered. The bakery fell silent once again. The security monitor continued playing above the counter, but nobody needed to watch it anymore. The sequence had become clear. The payment happened. The accusation came later. The restraint came after that. Every piece fit together. Ethan stared at the monitor for several long seconds. Then he looked toward the receipt. Then toward the customer holding the recording. His eyes finally settled on me. The smell of coffee had faded beneath the tension filling the room. The cashier slowly lowered her hands. So she paid before any complaint was made. The newcomer nodded. Yes. And the system confirmed it. Yes. Then why is she still cuffed? Nobody answered. The question hung over the bakery like a weight. Even the HOA liaison avoided looking at anyone. The customer near the window folded his newspaper and tucked it under his arm. That seems like the only question left. The man with the portfolio glanced toward Ethan. Not the only one. Ethan looked at him immediately. What does that mean? The man opened his portfolio for the first time. Several documents rested inside. Printed logs. Time stamps. Notifications. He removed a single page and placed it beside the tablets. The newcomer read it. His expression changed. You received a call. Ethan's jaw tightened. What call? The bakery phone call. The cashier looked up. So did several customers. The newcomer checked the page again. The one advising caution before the delay window expired. The room became still. Ethan remembered the call. Everyone could see it. The bakery phone sat only a few feet away. Silent now. The cashier spoke carefully. The caller asked to speak with him. The newcomer nodded. That call was logged. The customer with the recording frowned. You can see that? We can see many things. Outside, another vehicle stopped at the curb. Nobody rushed toward the entrance. Nobody needed to. The situation was already unfolding on its own. My phone vibrated softly on the counter. This time the notification remained on the screen longer. The newcomer looked at it. Then at me. Then back at the tablet. The supervisory review has started. The cashier looked worried again. Review of what? The man with the portfolio answered before anyone else could. Everything. The word landed heavily. The HOA liaison shifted backward until he nearly touched the pastry display. He looked smaller now. Less certain. The customer recording the video checked his battery level and kept filming. Good thing I never stopped recording. Several people quietly agreed. Ethan finally looked toward the newcomer. Who exactly requested this review? The newcomer held his gaze. The delay triggered it automatically. Automatic? Yes. The answer seemed to unsettle Ethan more than anything else. Because there was no person to argue with. No supervisor to persuade. No witness to dismiss. Just a system collecting facts. The security monitor flickered again. A new camera angle appeared. The front entrance. The counter. The exact moment the receipt was taken from my tray. The customer recording let out a low whistle. That is not helping him. Nobody disagreed. The newcomer stared at the screen. Then he looked directly at me. There is one detail they still have not seen. There is one detail they still have not seen. Every eye in the bakery shifted toward me. The newcomer stood motionless beside the counter. The tablets remained lit. The security monitor continued cycling through camera angles overhead. Outside, the line of dark vehicles had grown longer. Rainwater shimmered beneath their tires. Inside, nobody seemed interested in leaving. The smell of cinnamon and coffee lingered in the warm air. The customer with the recording phone adjusted his grip. What detail? He asked. The newcomer looked at me. The reason the transfer mattered. Ethan immediately focused on me again. So did everyone else. I glanced at the notification still visible on my phone. The screen reflected faintly across the counter. The transfer was time-sensitive. The cashier nodded slowly. We figured that much. Not just time-sensitive. The man with the portfolio folded his hands. Go on. The room became quiet enough to hear the cooling fans inside the register. I looked toward the window. One of the people outside was already speaking into a phone. Another watched the bakery entrance. None of them appeared surprised. The transfer involved evidence. Several customers exchanged looks. The teenager lowered his phone slightly. Evidence? Yes. Nobody spoke for a moment. The word carried weight all by itself. Ethan's expression changed. Not panic. Not yet. Something closer to realization. The newcomer picked up his tablet and checked a notification. That matches the review file. The HOA liaison stared at me. Why would evidence be connected to a bakery? The customer near the window answered before I could. Maybe because she was buying breakfast. A few people smiled. The HOA liaison did not. The security monitor above us switched to another camera angle. This one showed the front counter from overhead. The footage clearly displayed the receipt being removed from my tray. The customer recording the video shook his head. That keeps looking worse. Nobody disagreed. Ethan remained focused on me. You could have explained this earlier. The statement hung in the air. I looked at him calmly. You never asked. Silence followed. Long enough for several customers to glance away. The cashier looked down at the counter. The answer had landed harder than anyone expected. The newcomer checked another message on his tablet. Then another. The review team has completed the preliminary sequence. The customer near the window frowned. That sounds official. It is. Outside, one of the dark vehicles pulled away from the curb. Another immediately took its place. The movement drew attention for only a second. Then all eyes returned to the counter. The teenager raised his phone again. What happens now? The newcomer looked toward the security monitor. Then toward the recording phone. Then toward the receipt. Now they compare everything. The bakery phone suddenly rang. The sound startled several people. Nobody rushed to answer it. The phone rang again. Then again. Finally the cashier picked it up. She listened for several seconds. Her eyes widened. Yes. Another pause. She is still here. The room froze. The cashier slowly lowered the receiver from her ear and looked directly at me. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. They asked if Agent Maya Carter is safe. They asked if Agent Maya Carter is safe. The cashier's words seemed to stop time. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even the security monitor overhead felt suddenly irrelevant. The bakery phone remained pressed against her ear. Her eyes stayed fixed on me. The customer holding the recording phone slowly lowered it an inch. "Agent," he repeated. The teenager near the window blinked twice. "Federal agent." The smell of coffee drifted through the room again. Strange how normal things continued while everything else changed. Ethan stared at me. The certainty that had carried him all morning was gone. The HOA liaison looked like he wanted to disappear. The newcomer beside the counter closed his tablet and exhaled slowly. They were hoping that call would not become necessary. The cashier swallowed. "Who is asking?" She listened to the phone for another second. Then nodded. "I understand." Her hand trembled slightly as she ended the call. Nobody rushed her. Everyone wanted the answer. "Who was it?" asked the customer near the window. "Someone from a federal office." The room became silent again. Ethan looked at me. Then at the cuff. Then at the receipt. Then at the security footage still playing above us. Piece by piece, the morning was rearranging itself in his mind. The customer with the recording phone checked his screen. So she was telling the truth the whole time. "About the payment?" asked the teenager. "About everything." Outside, one of the people standing near the vehicles received a call and immediately began walking toward the entrance. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Just with purpose. The man with the portfolio noticed first. They received the update. The cashier folded her arms. "What update?" He looked toward me. "Confirmation." Nobody seemed satisfied with one-word answers anymore. The bakery had become a room full of people assembling a puzzle. The pieces were finally fitting together. My phone vibrated once. A new message appeared. The newcomer beside the counter glanced at it and nodded. "There it is." Ethan noticed. "What is it?" "Acknowledgement received." The answer landed heavily. The teenager frowned. "Acknowledgement from who?" The newcomer gave a small smile. "The people who were waiting for proof." The security monitor switched camera angles again. The image now showed the exact moment the receipt was taken from my tray. The customer recording the video shook his head slowly. "That footage is brutal." Nobody argued. The HOA liaison looked toward the door. One of the tablet carriers had already entered the bakery and was speaking quietly with the man holding the portfolio. They exchanged a few words. Then both looked toward me. Then toward Ethan. The cashier noticed. Something changed. "Yes," said the newcomer. "It did." Ethan remained silent. For the first time all morning, he seemed more interested in listening than speaking. The customer near the window folded his newspaper under one arm. "So what happens now?" The question drifted through the bakery. Nobody answered immediately. The people with tablets checked their screens. The security monitor continued playing. The recording phone remained pointed at the counter. The receipt sat beside the register like a witness that refused to leave. Then the man with the portfolio reached into his jacket and carefully removed an identification holder. The identification holder clicked open beneath the bakery lights. Nobody moved. Nobody even looked away. The man with the portfolio held it where everyone could see. Federal credentials. Clear. Official. Undeniable. The cashier slowly exhaled. The customer with the recording phone lowered his device for the first time all morning. "Wow," he whispered. The teenager near the window stared at me. Then at the credentials. Then back at me again. Ethan remained silent. The security monitor continued playing overhead. The footage no longer mattered. The receipt no longer mattered. The timeline no longer mattered. Not because they were wrong. Because they had already proven everything they needed to prove. The smell of fresh pastries drifted through the bakery once more. Normal life was trying to return. It just had not arrived yet. The federal representative closed the identification holder and placed it back inside his jacket. "The review is complete," he said. The words landed gently. Yet they carried more weight than anything else that morning. The newcomer with the tablet nodded. "All footage has been preserved." The customer holding the recording phone looked down at his screen. "Including mine?" "Including yours." The teenager smiled slightly. "Good." Outside, one of the dark vehicles pulled away from the curb. Then another. The line was beginning to shrink. The federal representative looked toward me. "Are you all right?" "I am." It was the first question anyone had asked me all morning. The cashier noticed that too. Her eyes dropped toward the counter. Ethan finally looked at the cuff around my wrist. The silence that followed felt different from the earlier silences. Less tense. More honest. He reached forward and removed it. The metal clicked softly against the counter. Nobody celebrated. Nobody applauded. The room simply breathed again. The customer near the window folded his newspaper. That should have happened a long time ago. Several people nodded. The HOA liaison looked at the floor. He had not spoken in several minutes. He seemed smaller now. The confidence was gone. The assumptions were gone. Only the consequences remained. Ethan looked toward me. I should have listened. The apology came quietly. No excuses. No arguments. Just the truth. I studied him for a second. Then I nodded once. You should have. The federal representative glanced toward the door. There will be follow-up reviews. Ethan understood exactly what that meant. Everyone did. The teenager with the recording phone saved a backup copy of the video. The cashier printed another receipt and placed it beside my coffee. This time nobody touched it. The security monitor finally returned to its normal display. The bakery lights reflected across the glass front windows. Outside, the last dark vehicle began pulling away. My phone vibrated one final time. The acknowledgement had been accepted. The transfer process was restored. The delay was over. The federal representative smiled faintly. They received everything. I picked up my coffee. It had gone cold hours ago. The blueberry scone sat exactly where it had been when the morning started. A simple pastry. Nothing more. Yet it had revealed everything. Around me, conversations slowly returned. Chairs moved. Orders resumed. Life continued. As I walked toward the door, sunlight broke through the clouds and spilled across the bakery floor. Behind me, nobody was talking about the pastry anymore. They were talking about the recording.